The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Fantasy NBA Today, a Hoop Ball presentation, and of course, this show and all our shows presented to you by the good people at Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee Company. HawaiianIsles.com is the website. At HI Kona Coffee on Twitter, or you can find them on Amazon at Hawaiian Isles. I will say, those of you that have been listening to the last few shows, this will be more of a Dan update than anything else. I am finally turning a corner. My first cold symptoms were a week ago today. I had the sore throat on Wednesday, right when I finished that podcast. And I thought, come on, man, let's just cross your fingers that this is just the result of doing too many podcasts. And it wasn't. And then by the weekend, I was a wreck. Saturday, Sunday, Monday, even most of yesterday. I just felt pretty awful in varying degrees of awful achiness and sinuses and so forth, and brutal headaches and coughs. And finally today, I feel a little bit better. I'll admit I'm on about 25% of the medicines I was the last few days. Voice is still coming back, so you'll have to bear with me a little bit on that side. I think it's going to be a little bit deeper than usual. I don't have that higher octave back yet from coughing and snucking and wheezing and whatever else has been going on over here. But I do think I have the vocal strength, I hope, to get through today's podcast. A few things on the docket for today. We've got, of course, a review of a relatively short and, by all accounts, relatively simple Tuesday card, which I know is not exactly what you want to hear. We got a little bit of confirmation from things on that card, and we can do a little bit of a deep dive on a couple of those teams. I think I want to spend a little more time exploring Mo Harkless in Portland, and then what's going on with the New York Knicks right now, and the Denver Nuggets, I suppose, since they're getting a bunch of dudes back. But overall, the stuff that happened yesterday was not that interesting. It was just an easy fantasy day. We do have some players already that are scratched for tonight, and that's probably something to keep an eye on more than anything else. And we can hopefully continue our discussion of the value of a streaming slot on your roster for a number of reasons. We started that yesterday. We're also going to be talking to the great Vince Miracle on today's podcast. Yes, our old buddy. He's making a return. He will be a guest pro in this week's DFS Beat the Expert contest over at DraftKings. Don't worry, Mike Apotria will still be with us. He is still the initial expert that needed to be beat. And Mike will join us on tomorrow's show as well. So the hope here is that some of you guys that didn't feel inspired to go beat Mike Apotria might feel inspired to go beat Vince Miracle, because he's getting in on this bad boy. And the DFS room, I hope, continues to grow. That contest is going to be on Friday. And we will be sending the link out with the directions to the room by hopefully around the time that this podcast is done. My hope is that we'll have that out to you by late morning here on the Pacific Coast. So Vince Miracle coming up. We'll talk a little bit of DFS stuff tonight, just a little what's going on in his life. I know Vince has a birthday coming up in the next couple of days, so that'll be fun for him. We'll play a little catch-up, a little what's he got going on in season-long stuff, how's his life. And then, I haven't done a ton of exploring of the DFS card tonight, since I generally only play in our hoop ball contests. But I'll pick Vince's brain on maybe a few things that we can look at if you were to get into it tonight in a non-hoop ball contest. Just things to kind of look out for, and perhaps a lineup that he's putting together. We'll also preview the Wednesday evening card. We're sort of back into the regular flow of things tonight. It's January 2nd, so holidays are officially now in the rearview mirror until, as I mentioned yesterday, my favorite NBA holiday of the year, MLK Day, where there are games for basically 12 consecutive hours without any sort of break between them. But today we've got a traditional 9-game card. There are 4 revenge angles at play. There are other things going on, and we do have some fantasy stuff tonight. Thank goodness we have some fantasy stuff to keep an eye on, and we'll do that at the end of the show. First thing is breaking news. Let's go through some of the news that we got this morning before even going on air. We've got word that Markieff Morris is seeing a Dr. Andrew Doucette in Dallas. He's an orthopedic surgeon and a spine consultant for the Cowboys. He actually performed Michael Porter Jr.'s surgery last year. Michael Porter, the rookie draft pick of the Denver Nuggets. That is, by all accounts, a bad sign for Markieff Morris, who said he was expecting to be back soon. But if you're going to see a guy who does neck and back surgery, that's not a good thing. So by all accounts, that little piece of news should give you, I think, maybe a tiny bit more confidence in a Thomas Bryant pickup. He's probably grabbed in every one of your leagues by this point because he had those big games over the last couple of weeks. But if indeed Markieff Morris goes down for any stretch of time, and if he's out for the rest of the year, then Thomas Bryant is the lone center on that roster until Dwight Howard, if at all, he comes back. By the way, I can't believe how heavily owned Dwight Howard is in all of my 9-category leagues. Well, why would you sit on a guy who's been awful and is a punt guy all season long? At this point, just go somewhere else, man. We don't even know if he's going to play this year. But I think that makes Thomas Bryant a guy that needs to be owned if he isn't in your league. And again, he's owned in every single one of my competitive leagues, but he's only owned in 47% of Yahoo leagues overall. So that means that maybe you guys are in one where you could still flip him into your lineup. Other notes from this morning, and there have been a bunch of them already. It's a busy day. Jeremy Lamb, who hurt his hamstring in their New Year's Eve game with the Orlando Magic, he's out tonight, which we figured. Hamstring things do tend to they linger a little bit. So my expectation is that, and I don't know exactly how bad it was, but like with a guy like Chris Paul, it takes 2 to 3 weeks. Jeremy Lamb probably healing a tiny bit faster. I would put my money on somewhere between 10 and 15 days on the absence for Jeremy. So you're obviously holding, but don't get your hopes too high. And this brings me to something that I stressed during some podcasts last year that I haven't actually looped back around for this season because, you know what, many of you are new to the podcast, so sort of the new to you thing. This is how you should mentally. Sometimes we got to get into the mental side of fantasy basketball. And I know that sounds stupid because, like, what are you talking about, Dan? We're sitting at our computers. We put guys in a lineup and then they go do it in real life. And once that happens, you have no control over it. But there's a psychological aspect to the fantasy basketball side of things. Those of us, like myself, like many of you guys who listen to this show, are really, really piped in with all the stuff that's going on in the fantasy basketball world. I saw a lot of tweets over the last couple days prior to the game last night saying, should I drop Enes Kanter? And my initial inclination was to give a hard no, and then I had to go back and kind of check myself a little bit. Well, why are these questions coming up? And the truth of the matter was, he had a couple of not great games in the middle of December where he had 15-6 and 10-5 and 12-6, and those games are not going to knock your socks off. And then he had an 8-5 game where he played only 14 minutes, and he had a 4-rebound, 3-assist game where he played just 17 minutes when they got blown out in Utah, and that was on the 29th of December. And so I get it. People were like, well, his minutes are trending down. He looks awful. There's all this buzz around him just not playing anymore. Should I drop him? And the answer continued to be no. Exercise patience in everything you do. And it's not because things didn't look bad. I will absolutely cop to the notion that if you looked at his game log and you saw the minutes trending from 36 to 28 to 25 to 17, you'd say to yourself, this doesn't look good for my guy Enes. But at the same time, the two really not good, the one truly bad and one not very good game, was altogether 2 games. 2 games, not even a week. And that's psychological element number 1. Because these teams play pretty frequently, you get these big ebbs and flows in basketball and baseball fantasy that you don't get in football. Fantasy football guys, if somebody has a down game, the first thought is not, I have to drop this guy. It's, I got to wait another game or two and sort of see this thing through, especially if it's a proven asset like an Enes Kanter. With NBA stuff, we're making moves. Yeah, I'm snapping next to the microphone. Things are happening. Every day, things are happening. There's a guy that Luke Kornet surfaces, Thomas Bryant surfaces, Tomas Satoransky surfaces, Mikal Bridges surfaces. Guys are just popping up left and right. And so when Cantor is the guy slumping on your team, I get it. That in your gut, you're thinking, I got to drop my guy that looks like he's vanishing from the face of the earth. But the other side of that, and this is the one that wins out 90% of the time, not all the time. This could have ended poorly for Ennis, and it still could. If you have a guy with, as we like to call it on this podcast, a portfolio where he's done it before, and Cantor's been a per-minute monster his entire career. He just hadn't really ever gotten enough minutes to be successful until New York. You're not dropping him on 2 bad games. All he needs is 21 minutes to be a fantasy guy. That's it, because he's going to have a great field goal percent. He's going to have a free throw number that generally doesn't kill you, and it's actually been helpful the last 2 years with New York after being right around league average for any player, but better than league average for a big man in Oklahoma City and Utah. He scores, he rebounds. Those things are valuable. You know, I love percentages. I think they're really hard to find these days. He doesn't do anything on the defensive side, and he turns it over too much for a center, but these are things you overlook a little bit because he's good at things that are oftentimes hard to find. Enes Kanter's just one example of this. I think the psychological point number one that I wanted to make here is don't overreact to 2 games. Almost always give a guy of his track record multiple weeks. Bench him if you have to. He wasn't killing you, even in an unlimited games format, other than the one game where he threw up a goose egg. But how many guys on your fantasy team haven't had one truly awful game at this point of the year? Very few. Even the first rounders have one terrible game every once in a while. It's usually still okay, but, you catch my meaning on this one. The other psychological element that I wanted to talk about today, and we have time for it because that Tuesday recap isn't going to take very long, is guys returning from injury. I think the best way to game plan for that in your mind, and many of you heard this discussion last year, so you can fast forward 5 minutes if you want, or just listen to it again if you're bored and driving somewhere, is always game plan for your injured guy to be out for the longest possible stretch that it could be. The name that we were talking about when this came up was Jeremy Lamb, who I think, by all accounts, has been a relatively quick healer in his career. He's not super injury-prone by any stretch. He's been prone to falling out of the rotation at times in his career. But when he's been hurt, he usually comes back in good order, right? He's not been a big-time risk. He played 80 games for Charlotte last year. He only played 62 the season before that. I mean, he has had nagging things in his career, but he's never been a big-time player, so nobody really cared when he had an injury. And if they had to shut him down, they shut him down. He might only miss 2 games with a right hamstring strain. It's true. He might be back by the weekend. I don't know. I'm not Jeremy Lamb. I don't have access to Jeremy Lamb's hamstrings. I only have access to the same beat writers and quotes that you guys do. I probably spend more time looking for that stuff than most normal human beings should, but it is the same information at the end of the day. What I do have on my side is, one, history, precedent. We understand that hamstrings and groins are the core and lower body injuries that do tend to take a little bit longer to heal. And 2, I know that it's easier for your brain, for my brain and your brain, to come to terms with a long absence and then be pleasantly surprised by an early return than to expect an early return and live and die with game time decisions on your guy for a week while they're waiting to come back. That's a horrible experience to have a guy on your team, and we'll just keep talking about Jeremy Lamb because he's the guy that's hurt, and it sort of doesn't matter because it hasn't happened yet with him. But let's say, and he's already been ruled out for tonight, but let's say that for Charlotte's next ball game, which is when? I don't know when their next game is. This isn't the kind of thing I have to know on a podcast. The 5th, so the weekend. let's say that on the 5th, he's a game time decision. The best thing you can do with your brain is to expect him to sit. And don't even worry about their next ball game. In fact, with an injury like a hamstring strain, I'm going to look at their schedule. Let's see. He suffered the hamstring strain on the 31st of December. I'm going to say January 14th is when I expect Jeremy Lamb to come back. I'm going to game plan for 2 full weeks of Lamb on the sidelines. And if they keep calling him a game time decision for a week in advance, I don't care because I wasn't expecting him back anyway. And this is the beauty of playing mind games with yourself. Trust me on this. It sounds like a small thing, but it will save you. It'll add years to your fantasy life. Just assume your guys are going to miss the longest possible stretch of time and then adjust if it seems like they come back early. Zach LaVine. He's a good example of someone that most of us figured would be out for another week and a half to 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden, boom, questionable. He played off the bench, and he's ready to roll. That felt great, didn't it? Wasn't it easier? And that's an easy one, too, because almost every fantasy site, and accurately, by the way, including our own and myself, figured that they just sit him for the full month. Bulls are tanking at this point. They've had half their team injured for the first 40 games of the year. There's no point in making a hard push now. Why rush him back? So we all game planned for Zach LaVine to be out 3 to 4 weeks. And then, ba-boom! Week and a half later, he was ready to roll. Awesome. We had game planned for the long absence, and then we got pleasantly surprised. The thing that kills you is a guy like, say, Nico Mirotic, where we just have no idea how long he's going to be out. Tristan Thompson is an example of someone where we game planned for him to miss 2 to 4 weeks, and it looks like he's going to miss exactly on the long end of that. He's available to play tonight, by the way. He got injured on December 10th, and it's been about 3.5 weeks since that day. He was expected to miss 2 to 4 weeks, and it's been 3.5. So we game planned for him to miss a month. We made all of our roster decisions based on him missing a month. We figured he was worth sitting on because he was averaging 12 and 12 before going down. I imagine he's going to play big minutes now coming back, and everything worked out the right way. If he had come back a week ago, that would have been great. But if you had expected him to be only out for the 2 weeks and game planned for your team to deal with that, and then you were watching every day and you were disappointed every single day, that would have killed you. So let's take care of our brains while we play fantasy basketball as well. All right, let's talk Tuesday. Wasn't particularly interesting. Just got one piece of breaking news. Kyrie Irving is out tonight with the corneal abrasion. So nobody's playing in that freaking ball game. Kyrie's out. Rob Covington's out. Jeff Teague is out. Derrick Rose is out. Who the crap is left in that one? Who's playing? Well, Boston still has 95 other guys on their roster. That'll be just fine. So you want to stream Terry Rozier, have at it. I got in on the Timberwolves at +6 because that's one of the revenge games. But if that line drops now with Kyrie out, maybe they had already game planned for it. But if that thing falls to 4, I think I might try to middle it. So I'll keep an eye on that one. So that's interesting news for today. Kyrie out. He was questionable, so I'm not going to advise a Rozier pickup for the future. But if you're in a league where you can make a move for the night of, then he's probably a good guy to grab. So you're sitting on that one. I have to admit, I actually thought they were playing tomorrow, so I screwed that one up in my head. So Kyrie is out. Everybody is out in that ball game. DJ Augustine is in for the Magic. That's not that interesting. Miles Turner had surgery on his broken nose, but there's been no indication of a concussion, so he's hopeful to play. Eric Gordon hoping to go in the next game for the Rockets. But that's the kind of report, both of those, Turner and Gordon, where if I was you guys, and I have some Miles Turner, I don't have any Eric Gordon, I would expect those guys to miss their next ball game. Just game plan for a miss in your mind, and then if they play, you can be pleasantly surprised. Okay, now we turn our attention to Tuesday. Short card, like I said, Knicks is probably going to be the team we spend most of our time with. Utah in Toronto. I had Utah at +3 on the revenge, so they failed to cover. They had a bunch of chances down the stretch in a free throw contest to hit a three-pointer and either push, or they were down 5 with the ball at one point. If they knocked down a 2 or 3 at that, then I might get myself a backdoor, but it didn't work. And yesterday, one of the very rare bad revenge days we've had so far. Utah and Detroit both failed to cover. Jay Crowder had 30 points, 6 rebounds. He made all of his free throws, and he made 60% of his shots. He didn't have a single steal, block, or assist in kind of an odd twist. And I would expect him to be horrible in his next ball game because these things have a way of averaging out. Joe Ingles continues to suck butt on the road. He's awful away from altitude. It's the damnedest thing. And I am, if my team that had Joe Ingles on it wasn't so beaten and bruised, I have 5 guys out on that club, I'd sit his ass every time they go on the road. Ingles has been a real pain in the ass when Utah's away from home. He's been kind of a pain in the ass at home sometimes, too. Something to think about if you have extra guys in a games cap format, just to put that in the back of your head. On the Toronto side, Kawhi Leonard, career-high 45 points. Pascal Siakam had 28 and 10. That was also a career high. He bounced back after, actually, Pascal had been slowing a tiny bit. You figure there are going to be the ups and downs of a long season. But obviously having JV and Lowry out continues to give these other guys a boost. It sounds like Lowry is expected back in about a week, and Valanciunas is about 2 weeks out. So they're not that far away from getting back to full health. Danny Green, we always get questions about Danny Green. You guys know the deal with him at this point. I don't know why I have to keep repeating it. He's not going to put up big numbers every night. His lines are going to be very quiet. He's going to try not to kill you. And then every once in a while, he's going to wake up and give you one of those big bopper 7 cash counter games. And you're going to go, oh, right, that's why he's doing a thing. He's a top 100 guy. I was hoping that maybe he would take one small step forward this year, but that hasn't really happened. And, he's like, the thing about being a top 100 guy is that you're 2 big games away from being a top 85 guy. So 2 bad games away from being top 110. You know what you're getting with Danny Green. He's one of the old man squad guys. He needs his 30 minutes. He got there last night, but he couldn't hit his shots. And for whatever reason, it was just an off game. But you know what? If you want to go chase upside, I'm fine with that. Green does serve a nice purpose for a lot of teams that maybe are super high on turnovers. Plug a guy in who can get you some threes, steals, blocks, smattering of rebounds, not many, and do it without turning the ball over. That's his story. It's not changing. Detroit got blown out in Milwaukee. Brook Lopez hit 7 more three-pointers. He's been awesome this year. I don't know. People keep asking. It's slowed a little bit lately, but there was a long stretch where we were like, should I bail on Brook Lopez? What are you talking about, dude? Is it because he played like 20 minutes for a couple games in a row? There's a lot of matchup stuff that goes on with the usage of a guy like Lopez. When they play teams that are tiny and fast, he's going to have trouble sticking around on the court. Like his minutes against Boston were down because they tended to go small in that one. His minutes against New Orleans were low because he just couldn't guard Anthony Davis, and they needed somebody with a little more speed. Cleveland was a team that was going small. The Warriors. So when they play a team with a guy like Andre Drummond, well, Lopez is in business. He's going to play 30 minutes a game. And I don't know. People get crazy. Detroit is terrible, and I can't believe they started the year so well. Now they've basically been exposed. Eric Bledsoe, good to see him getting back in the mix. 18 points, 4 boards, 6 assists, and a steal. Nice, efficient game for Eric. No turnovers as well. That's a nice sign. Chris Middleton could not boast the 0 turnover mark. He had 4 of them, but continues to heat up. Shot 64% last night, 22, 5, and 2. And he's got a long way to go to make up for that month of being a horrible shooter, but he's already back inside the top 50 after just 3 better shooting games. It doesn't take much for someone of his track record, and he's starting to get going again. Free throw percentage is back up to 87 after it had taken a little bit of a dip. And over the last week, which is effectively those 3 games, Middleton is a top 20 fantasy player without any defensive stats. He has 1 steal in those 3 games combined. The shooting percentage obviously won't stay at 65, but the steals will not also stay at 0.3. So I believe you've missed your buy low window if you didn't take advantage of it. We knew he was going to get it turned around. We just didn't know when. And the answer was 2 games ago. Jusuf Nurkic, my God, man. This is the one. This is the game of the century. 24 points, 23 rebounds, 7 assists, 5 steals, 5 blocks, 5 out of 10 shooting, and 14 out of 16 at the free throw line. A 9-cat dominant performance. He actually did it. He had 4 turnovers, but 4 turnovers is nothing with a performance like this one. The rare 5x5, pioneered by the great Marcus Camby, and then followed up, of course, by the great Andrei Kirilenko. Jusuf Nurkic gets himself into the mix. This is a hell of a ball game. He's had a really nice year. He was a guy that I was targeting in drafts, and he ended up going earlier than I could get him almost every single time, because in the mocks that I was doing, he was falling into the 70s, and that just didn't happen when I got into the real drafts. And it's a shame, too, because he was a perfect post-hype guy this year. He was a dude who had that big month at the end of the 2016-2017 season. So last year, people drafted him in the 20s and 30s, and I said, he hasn't shown he can do this for more than 30 days in a row. And he was a massive disappointment until he did it again at the end of last year. But people didn't really believe it that time, so he was falling 3-4 rounds in drafts. And he ended up being a really nice value. You figured he would land somewhere in between. He's number 47 right now on the heels of that massive performance. So good on you if you got Nurk. I waited too long and couldn't get him. He's been a nice value. I also think, by the way, this would be a marvelous time to try to spin him for a different top 50 guy, because this is sort of the ceiling for Nurk. That's going to probably be one of the best games, if not the best game of his entire NBA career. And if that's true, that's a freaking great game to be your best one. But if we're here to witness it, and if you can spin him for somebody ranked, let's say, within 2 or 3 spots of him right now, that's an enormous win. Look for somebody in that top 50 that's maybe at the bottom of their value, like an Otto Porter, who's coming back from injury tonight. Chris Middleton, if it's not too late to buy low on him. Who else is in that neighborhood that's probably on their way up instead of down? Eric Bledsoe is coming out of a slump of his own. These are guys that, at the beginning of the year, if I had told you could spin Jusuf Nurkic for one of those 3 guys, you wouldn't even think about it. You only think about it now because Nurk is hot and they're not. But that's where you see those 2... God, I wish you guys could see what I do with my hands when I'm doing these podcasts. That's where you see the 2 graphs come together. And Nurk's graph is a downward-facing curve. That's not a negative thing. I just mean that it's a sad face. I'm trying to really dumb this thing down because that's bad podcasting. And a guy like a Middleton, his is a smiley face. And they're meeting right in the center. The bottom of Middleton's curve and the top of Jusuf's curve have touched. And this is where if you could flip them, then you could grab the guy who's headed back up towards top 30 value as opposed to the guy in Nurkic who's probably headed more towards top 60 because, again, that was the big one. That was the big one, guys. Let's be honest. We know there's sort of no arguing that. Most of his games, he's been good. Make no mistake, he's been solid this year. But, you average good and bad. That's how you figure out where a guy's going to end up. And that was a really special basketball game. Also of note in this one, Mo Harkless, 33 minutes, 11 points, 9 rebounds, 2 steals, 2 blocks, and a 3-pointer. Aside from the fact that he's seemingly going to skip all of their back-to-backs, or one half of each of their back-to-backs, it looks like Mo Harkless is ready to be a contributor in fantasy. He's scoring at a decent percentage, not a high clip. He's been rebounding lately, which is unusual for him. I don't think that's going to stick around. He's usually more in the 4 to 5 range. But the steals, the blocks are always good for him, and he'll usually get you around 1 3-pointer, give or take, 0.2 or something like that. So I think you could actually consider adding him if you're in a spot where you need those type of statistics. If you're hunting for defensive stats, low turnovers, I don't think the rebounds are going to stick around. I don't think he's going to hit that many threes. In fact, the most he's hit in a game is 1 over the last month. But he's useful. He's officially entered the realm of useful. So consider it. And finally, the one team that I really wanted to spend some time on, because nothing that came out of the Philly Clippers game was interesting, even in the slightest bit. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, or Shea, he had a slightly better game, but because Avery Bradley got ejected, that's it. Denver's getting all their guys back. So, Malik Beasley had a big game, but he's about to disappear because Gary Harris's minutes are about to ramp up, and Will Barton is a week away, and Paul Millsap's minutes are ramping up. So it's going to become the old guard in Denver again. And I'm a little worried about Jamal Murray, who is looking more like the Jamal Murray we thought he'd be last year when he went huge. And he just sort of went big a year early and then settled back to where... Remember last year, you guys killed us at Hoop Ball because we kept saying he had the profile of a top 80, top 90 fantasy guy. And then everybody on Denver got hurt, and he was a top 40 fantasy guy, and we had to wear that one. And rightfully so. We were off by 3.5, 4 rounds on Murray. And then this year, we came around. We're like, all right, looks like Jamal, he showed he could be better than we thought. And now he's back where we said he'd be last year. Whatever. Jamal's just screwing with us, I think. He's aware of whatever we're saying at Hoop Ball, and he's just going to try to do the opposite. But I don't care about that side of things. Everything's going to sort itself out pretty soon for them. The Knicks. Emmanuel Mudiay, he's got a stranglehold on that point guard job, which is pretty cool if you're in a format where his type of stats can be useful. But he's a bad foul shooter. We saw that yesterday. He missed both of his free throws. He turns the ball over a lot. He takes a lot of ill-advised shots, and generally the field goal percent for him will not be good. I'm expecting a negative regression for Emmanuel. He's been shooting the ball really well this season. He's at 46%. That's still well above his career mark. And that makes me think he's probably trending down on that one. But he's in there for now, and he's survived the last couple of lineup changes, so I'm inclined to believe that they're going to stick with him for a bit. And if you wipe out the bad percentages and the turnovers, 15-9 for a waiver wire pickup with 2 steals, a block, and a three-pointer sounds pretty good. Points league, and that's why we stamp him as such. Kevin Knox, to me, still fits more of a points league-y profile because he's doing a lot of scoring and very little else. Some three-pointers. He only had 4 rebounds in 39 minutes on the floor as a small forward. That's really not enough by all accounts. And yeah, I mean, shooting percentage isn't going to be that high because he's taking a lot of jump shots. Nice to see Enes Kanter, by the way, play well in his 20 minutes yesterday, 17 and 12. This is why you don't punt on a guy who can get it done in 21 to 22 minutes a ball game. Noah Vonleh had 14 more rebounds. He's locked into big minutes at their power forward spot because he's also their best defender. Tim Hardaway Jr. is actually looking more like a points league guy lately himself, but he did have 16 in this one. And makes his free throws, so that sort of flips that on its head a little bit. And then Luke Kornet. Yes, we saved the best for last because this is a point of discussion. Luke Kornet had 19 points, 6 boards, 1 assist, a block, and 4 three-pointers yesterday on 6 out of 9 shooting and a perfect 3 for 3 at the free throw line. I don't know how long he's going to have this starting job. Mitchell Robinson apparently is not that far away, but we don't really know for sure what his schedule is either. Presumably, New York is going to try to move Enes Kanter. My guess would be he ends up getting bought out because nobody's willing to pay for these aging guys. Then, the writing's on the wall in New York. They're not going to play him down the stretch this year. There's no reason to. So they're playing him as much as they have to show he's got something in the tank and hoping that teams will compete for his services and get them, a second-round pick or something. But what we've seen the last 2 seasons is that other teams are generally willing to wait out the buyout market to say, you know what, we're not going to part with something. We don't think anybody else is going to part with something either, and we believe that we have a better shot to go sign this guy after he's bought out. The good teams usually can do that. Hey, we're in 5th place right now. Come play for us. We'll give you a chance to go to the playoffs and do some stuff. And if there are a couple teams that are arrogant enough to believe that they can win that battle as opposed to parting with a second rounder, then they're not going to offer a second rounder. So he's probably going to get phased out, but it's still a ways off yet. All-Star break, I mean, we're talking about Cantor again. If he's going to be 17-12s from now for another month and a half, you keep riding it, and then you just hope that he gets hitched on with a team that's going to play him 20 minutes off the bench. That's fine still. That leaves Luke Kornet and Mitchell Robinson as the centers. What we've seen from Robinson so far is that he's probably going to foul out in less than 20 minutes because he's just out there flying around trying to block everything and landing on people in the process. Like I've said before, if you have an injury spot, I think you can afford to sit on Robinson because his blocks upside is insane. But for right now, you should be starting Luke Kornet. Just as long as the word out of New York is he's their starting center, he should be a starting center for you also. And we will adjust as time permits. He could end up being a starting center for that team from now until the end of the year. I don't know. From what we've seen, I would guess that he won't be. I think they'll probably switch it up again at some point, and it'll be Robinson or Cantor, or Kornet will start but only play 4 minutes at the beginning of the ball game. Fizdale is tanking away any way he can figure out how to, and so who knows what's going to go on there. But he's playing really well right now, and when a guy's playing really well and there's no obvious end in sight, you ride it. He's played 27 or more minutes in each of his last 3 games. He's averaging a ridiculous 5 3-pointers over that stretch. I don't think that's going to keep up. And he's shooting crazy well from the perimeter, which also probably won't keep up. But if he's playing 28 to 35 minutes a game, he's going to get you 5 rebounds. He's going to get you probably an assist or 2. He's going to get you near a blocked shot because he is a center and he has to defend the rim at some point on the defensive side. And he's firing array from the outside. So roll him out there, man. I've got him in a couple of spots. I'm rolling him out there, and I feel pretty good about it. In one league, I actually picked him up just because I had Tristan Thompson and Jonas Valanciunas both out at center and thought, crap, I literally don't have any other centers to play. That's a lie. I have Hassan Whiteside, but I didn't want to play him. So Luke Kornet, roll him out there. Let it fly. All right, let's spend some time with our old pal Vince Miracle. Bring him onto the pod. We'll talk some DFS. We'll find out what's going on in his world, and we will, of course, start to get you amped up for Friday's Beat the Expert contest. I need to get intro music for the great Vince Miracle, and it's either going to be, you know what, I think it's going to be I Believe in Miracles, right? Do you use that on any of your shows?
No, I'm not.
No.
I don't know. I think the only time I really use my last name is when I need to plug something. Like it's like the only time let's make miracles happen.
Oh, man.
Listen to my DFS show.
Oh, man. We got to get Hot Chocolate as your intro music. You sexy thing. I believe in miracles. I'm getting over a cold, so I can't sing on this one. Vince Miracle at VM Center, if you want to follow him on Twitter. My guy. How you been? What's the good word?
I am doing great. Dan, and you said you're coming off of a sickness. I think I'm starting to get sick. I'm not going to lie.
No, you got a birthday coming up. You can't get sick. It's birthday party time for you.
I know. I'm about to be old. I'm not going to say my age.
Don't
26.
even tell me, because it's not even remotely close to old. I'm going to kill you.
Yeah, my birthday's on Saturday. Hopefully I get to enter the weekend with a big win on my DFS slate for Friday.
That's right.
Then since the last time we've talked, my DFS show is launched on Dash Radio. Comes out every single Friday, so we can help you guys take on that big Friday slate every single week, heading into all the way till the end of the season and through the playoffs. So yeah, a lot of stuff going on. It just sucks that I'm starting to get sick right before my birthday.
Don't
worry.
Fight it.
Party anyways.
Yeah, I know you will. You're a young buck. I don't want to hear that old crap. I know you got kids, so that sort of makes you old by association, because that age is you had like 4 years for every year that there is a child in your life. And then for me, working in minor league baseball, that's like 3 years for every year. So let's see. If I started minor league ball at the age of 23, and I worked in minor league ball for 8 years, I don't know, maybe like 47, and then I've had a kid for 2. So I'm like 55 now, I think, at this point, in like years that my body has suffered. And I think that puts you at like late 30s, right? So if you
my body feels like it's going into like 38 years old, 40 years old, because I have two kids. You know, I've had a kid since I was 20. The year I turned 21 is the year I had my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, I have been through a couple accidents where, like a dirt bike landed on top of me during a race when I was 18. That's why I stopped racing dirt bikes. I've been in a car accident, and that's why it hurt my knee really, really bad, and why I can't play basketball for multiple days in a row. I can't go past 3 days of playing basketball, or my knee will swell up to basically it's like the size of a bowling ball, and it does not go down right away. It goes down after a week. So, my body feels really, really old. I'm one of those people that take an ibuprofen before he goes to bed because my body feels sore sometimes. And yeah, I'm only 26, so this doesn't look
oh my
well
god,
for me my body right now.
Outlook. I'm shaking the magic 8-ball, and it comes up Outlook not so good. We gotta fix you, Vince. Vince Miracle is a DFS expert. He is going to be our guest pro in this week's Beat the Expert contest over DraftKings. That's on Friday. You'll be around. Will you be on Twitter on Friday for folks to ask you questions?
Of course.
Nice.
Follow me at VM Center. Let's do it.
Okay,
let's chit chat.
So if you think you can beat Vince, get on into that contest. We will be sending the link out later on today. I'm hoping basically around the time that this podcast gets released, we'll have the link to the contest. 100 slots, $3 the entry. The top 10 pay $30 a piece. Number 1 gets a Hoop Ball t-shirt. Number 2 gets a goodie bag from our partners over at Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee Company. And Vince will be in there ready to take you fools down and claim the prize for himself. What I wanted to do with you today, Vince, since we only have kind of limited time and it's my own fault for talking too long about other random fantasy BS, is do you have a Wednesday card that you can give the listeners just to try to show them, like, look, I'm going to kill you at this game. You can try to beat me, but I'm going to clobber you because I already have a card for tonight and I'm already thinking about Friday. This is your chance to basically talk smack to everybody that's going to be in the contest, is what I'm saying.
Well, first off, let me just talk a little bit back and let you guys know right now. If you're going to beat me, it's going to take a miracle.
Oh, God. That made me nauseous. But continue.
No, but we can go over today's card. What I will say is that it is only 10 o'clock in the morning where I'm at right now and when we're recording this show. So a lot of what I have is things that I've looked up early this morning that I'm not going to probably cement in until the closing hour leading into it. But yeah, we can definitely go over what I've seen and what I have, because I bet you there's some value plays that no one's really even looking at that they should be considering for this Wednesday slate.
Okay, so what's the first thing? This is what I always ask Mike when he comes on the show, Mike Apatria, our DFS guy here at Hoopball. Do you start by going to the breaking news, basically to find out what stars are out and where you can find some really easy fill-in guys to begin your roster? What's the sort of 1, 2, 3 version of how you build your team?
First thing I do is I like to see who's playing. That's the number one thing I like to do. I want to know who's playing. I want to know who could be in.
That's probably a good place to start.
After that, I go to the Vegas lines. I want to see what Vegas is saying, who's going to score the most points, what games I can probably target the most. I really don't care if big players are out, because most times in those notes, it's going to tell you to play their backup right away. And normally that person is going to be highly owned. So I don't really look for those injuries and consider those injuries. I mean, of course, I'm going to consider it when I'm building the lineup, but it's not one of those things that I look for because, again, if that player is out, everyone knows this other player is going to go off. For example, Miles Turner is out. Domantas Sabonis will be a key player that everyone's going to be eyeing to go put into their lineup. And for FanDuel, the cool thing about that, I mean, and I say that out loud, is that Sabonis is power forward and Turner is at a center, but those are things that I consider, like right now, Anthony Davis is considered a game time decision. If he doesn't play, who are you going to fill? I'm going to for sure be looking at Drew Holiday. That usage goes up, the ball's in his hand more. He's going to be the number one option. Could a guy like a Jahlil Okafor be a sneaky good play? There's little things like that, but no, I don't really look at the injuries. My thing is who's playing, who's scoring the most points, and then I like to see players with upside. And I like to feed off storylines, and that'll lead me to the first player that I'll name off today that I think will probably stay in my lineup. I don't really like his price at 5,100 on FanDuel. And the reason why I'm on FanDuel, I know you guys do DraftKings. My show that's on Dash Radio is presented by FanDuel. We're partnered up with them. So a lot of the things that you're going to hear is a lot of FanDuel talk from me. But Dennis Smith Jr., there's already talks about him having close to 20 people in the arena. Was born near the Charlotte area, grew up around there, so he's excited to play in that game. And I'm not saying that's going to make him play good, but normally for me, if there's people there watching, I'm going to show up. And at 5,100, that's a fair price, and I don't mind putting him in there.
Okay, so what is the following step then? This is the part where I always get stuck. So I actually myself, truly, Dan here, needs your assistance with this one. After you get past looking at totals and sort of outside influences and potential injuries leading to other guys, how do you fill out the remaining guys on your roster? That's where I always hit my impasse, where it's like, I don't freaking know. There's like 6 guys that are all within the right price range that I could use at small forward. I can't roll a dice. I roll a die. There has to be some better way. So how do you put the guys in your lineup where it's not as obvious?
Where it's not as obvious. I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you. I don't have like the numbers that would say like, hey, this guy's gonna be above it. But what I do is what I do.
Yeah, I heard it too.
What I like to do is go on other sites, because there's other sites that have great answers. Like, for example, RotoWire, and I don't go on there often, but they have a player or points per position on there. I like to look up stuff like that. Like, like, for example, Orlando gives up a ton of points to point guards. Who's the starting point guard for the Chicago Bulls? Oh, is it Chris Dunn? Chris Dunn doesn't score that many points. What about shooting guards? Oh, they don't give up that many points. They give up quite a bit of points to shooting guards as well. Plus, how often does the Chicago Bulls run and pick a roll? A lot, which means there's a lot of switches, which means Zach LaVine, whose usage is already incredible, might have an incredible night tonight, which he's also listed as my one of my top shooting guards today. I'm just giving you guys picks. No, but it's one of those things where I like to look at a little bit of everything. On top of that, my buddy Joe, who does does my show with me on Fridays.
Yeah, Hall of Famer Joe Morgan, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, Hall of Famer Joe Morgan is my co-host over there. He believes in game theory. He's read books on game theory, which basically says, don't always play to... I honestly, I don't know the full game theory. There's so many like different definitions of it, and there's so many different books on it. But he's really looked into that. He kind of got obsessed with the game theory of DFS. He came up with his own little algorithm. He's like a math dude, so mathematician. That's the word I was looking for. I said math dude.
Math dude works.
Couldn't figure out the word matician. He's like a mathematician. He really looks into like the numbers, and he figured out a little algorithm that's helped us out a little bit. We're working to still completely monitor it for this entire season before we say, hey, this is what we're doing.
Right.
You guys can start typing in your numbers, but that's something that we're working on. It's been working out a little bit, and I think there's still some tweaks here and there, but mainly it's just like points by position, upside for a player, usage of a player, how often does that player have the ball in his hands, and then also just eyeball test. I've watched almost every team play twice. I'll be honest. I've seen almost every team play twice. How does that team play? How does that player play on that team? You kind of just got to monitor stuff like that. Like a guy in Gordon Hayward, who is a complete flyer for me today. This is more of a gut feeling pick.
Well, Kyrie is out, so that, you've got that working towards it, right? There's going to be a lot of usage to go around with Irving not in the lineup.
Yeah, Irving's out. And then on top of that, Robert Covington is out for Minnesota. So that takes out their premier defender on the wing in Minnesota. It just seems like it could be a good night for Hayward, who is capable of passing, shooting, and scoring.
And I reckon he's not that expensive on these things, right? Because he hasn't put up big numbers this year.
His price has dropped significantly. He's a potential 30 guy, with 30 FanDuel points guy, DFS point guy. And right now on FanDuel, he costs $5,300, and I believe on DraftKings he's even cheaper than that, which makes him a very good play today.
Interesting. So let me ask you this on a question related to contests, since that's what we're going to have going on Friday. Do you build your lineup differently? Because I know that there's if you're in a 50-50 contest, you tend to go a little bit safer And if you're in a contest where you got to go top 10%, maybe you take some more flyers. Do you alter how you build your lineups for the different competitions you're in?
Of course. Yeah, like so for example, if I'm joining like a 4-4-4, which is a very popular, or 7-7-7 lineup, or I should say
what is
contest.
What does that mean?
like the big entries, or so like 7-7-7 would be like the $777 one, or the 5-5-5, the $5.55 one. The 4-4-4 is the $4.44 one, where max prize is $25,000.
Goodness.
In those and by the way, I got really close. I won like 200, but Dan, I was like a player away from being at the top. Like, I hate when it's like a certain player kills you. Like, it destroys my soul. Because I've never had that big of an amount just stay up there all night until the final game. And then it just go away.
Oof.
I was like, oh my gosh, it was heartbreaking. But it's okay. A come up is a come up is a come up. So I came up.
That's right.
Good. But yeah, like when I'm in those things, you have to take flyers. You have to look at the $3,800 guys. You have to try to avoid a guy in Anthony Davis, because you're not gonna make any gains if a player that you think is gonna go off is 68% owned. Because if that person's going off and he's on your roster and 68% of that contest has that person, well, guess what? You're all moving up at the same pace. No one's going up. So as much as you want to play a guy like Paul George against the Lakers, maybe it's not, that play. Maybe you should be like, oh man, at 10,000, he's definitely capable of getting that 50 points that he needs to give you. But should I look at a guy in Gordon Hayward? Should I look at a guy in Wiggins instead and just hope that Paul George has one of those off nights? And it's hard. You're going to fight with that all the way up until lineup lock, but you got to make those decisions in those big contests. If you want to do a 50-50 or one of those just cash games, yeah, play it safer. Put in the bigger the names, the better. You want those safe picks so you can get to that top echelon and double up your money. But if you're asking me if you want to do a GPP and just go straight to the top, you got to take flyers on certain players.
Yeah, and then I think for a contest like ours, which is only 100 people, there's probably kind of a middle ground there where it's like, you know what? If everybody's got this guy, then whatever, I could probably throw him into my lineup too and maybe separate myself with some of my some other pick of mine, because you don't have to beat everybody, and if everybody has the same guy, you're like, you know what? If that guy goes big and you don't have him, then you're basically cooked at that point. But if he doesn't go big and everybody's got him, then everybody's sort of on the same plane. Vince Miracle, I'm sorry to cut you off. I have like 95 more questions. Can we do this again soon?
Yeah, we can do this again whenever. Dan, I'm here for you.
I know, I screwed this one up.
Everyone.
I goofed this one. I didn't leave enough time. I talked too much about other random BS. Vince Miracle, the Miracle Man. He'll be in our DFS Beat the Expert contest on Friday. Again, we'll make sure he's tagged on Twitter. You can bug him with questions throughout the week. Vince, happy birthday.
Thank you. I'm catching up to you, Dan.
Yeah, you'll track me down one of these days. Vince Miracle, the man, the myth, the legend. Later, my man.
I believe in miracles.
There you go. Our old pal Vincent. Love that guy. You know what I realized I do when I'm on these things? I'm such a fidgety son of a gun. I used to pick my nails when I was younger, and 2 years ago, 3 years ago? 2 or 3 years ago, I just decided, that was my New Year's resolution, I was going to stop picking my nails, and I just did it. I was amazing. I was really surprised that I was able to do it by just saying, I'm not going to do this anymore. But I still have to fidget, so I actually take my socks on and off while I'm podcasting now. It's really strange. I don't even realize I've done it until after the show is over, and my right sock was like halfway past the heel of my foot. It wasn't all the way off, and it wasn't all the way on. Guys, I'm a weird dude. I don't know why you listen to me. I'm so strange. Tonight, the Wednesday card. We talked about some DFS stuff going on tonight already, but let's get into the season-long angles we're pursuing. And, of course, gambling stuff. A couple of revenge games on the docket this evening. I already mentioned one of them earlier in the show, and that was the Celtics T-Wolves game, which, with everybody injured, I don't even know what to make of that. But we're just going to flat watch these things and keep tracking them. The revenge angles today. Cleveland is 0-1 this year against the Heat. They are catching 6 points at home to Miami. The Brooklyn Nets, I believe. Yes, let me go back and double check on that. Brooklyn Nets are 0-1 this year against the New Orleans Pelicans, and they are hosting them. That's basically a pick'em in Brooklyn. Kind of an interesting line there. Phoenix 0-1 against Philadelphia. I actually had a weird dream about this particular basketball game last night, that Rashawn Holmes was going to go nuts against his old club, but I don't know if he's playing because he missed their last one with a stomach bug, and those do tend to take a little bit of time to recover from because you lose all of your strength. How can you fly through the air the way Rashawn loves to if he has no strength? So it's Cleveland, Brooklyn, Minnesota, and Phoenix. Those are the 4 revenge games on the docket tonight. I don't like them all, but I'm watching them all. That's how that's going right now. Of all of those, I think it's weird. Like the Cavs actually look like a decent wager. I don't know why I feel that way, but maybe it's the Tristan Thompson thing where it's just a stabilizing force to get him more shots. You can go get some offensive rebounds after those clankers keep clanking. I actually kind of like the Wizards. It's not a revenge game at all, but I love the fact that John Wall is out. I just feel like they're going to go free and easy for a little bit now. They're clean in house. Just get all the bad blood out. Markieff Morris is off getting specialist treatment. John Wall's gone. Now it's time to have a little fun, I guess. And Otto Porter's coming back as well, so now it's going to be ball movers instead of ball stoppers. There's going to be a lot of Bradley Beal. But I don't know. When teams, this is almost like a coaching change for that team, right? Where everybody just feels like a weight's been lifted for a little bit. Well, not long term. But anyway, we'll see how that one plays out. Not a revenge angle, so we're not going to track it. Nets, I think that's a pretty good-looking one. Pelicans have been struggling. Julius Randle was huge in their last one, but it's all Anthony Davis or bust at this point, so we'll see. T-Wolves, Celtics, I don't have a clue. And then Phoenix, I honestly don't know what to make of this thing. They've been better on the road than they are at home. I like the fact that they're showing fight. I am very concerned about what Joel Embiid might do to DeAndre Ayton, which I think was what I had in my dream, and that's why Rashawn Holmes ended up playing big minutes in that one. Yeah, that's right. I do this too much. Fantasy stuff. We're watching Tristan Thompson's return in Cleveland. What does that do to the rest of the pieces? Miami, Dion Waiters might even play in this ball game, so it just goes from crowded to fire hazard, right? You can't have this many people in the room. This is a fire hazard. I don't even know. I think Whiteside and Richardson are basically the guys you're using. Winslow, more points leaguey again because of the percentages stuff, but he's been good lately too, and then you just see how it goes from there. Charlotte, we'll see how the fill-in situation goes. Willie Hernan-Gomez might get the start. We heard that's a probable selection for the Hornets. And then Malik Monk probably going to see the most minutes at shooting guard with Jeremy Lamb out, but his stat profile isn't that great, so I'm not running and leaping for anybody. In that Washington game, we're obviously watching Tomas Satoransky to see how that plays out. Atlanta, we've been keeping an eye on the what goes down without Kent Bazemore situation. Sounds like Dwayne Dedmon's going to be back for this one, so that will render the other centers, I don't know, completely useless, but fairly useless. Elsewhere on the card, with everybody hurt in Minnesota, you're looking at a potential big one for guys like Tyus Jones filling in. Cat's going to have to go crazy. You might even see some Dario Saric at the 3, believe it or not, in this game. They're going to have to try to piecemeal this thing together. Josh Okogie is going to get the start, but he hasn't shown that he's been aggressive enough to turn it into anything yet. Boston, yeah, I mean, you got the Terry Rozier fill-in game. That's about it. Orlando, we're watching Jonathan Isaac. That's the constant thing. Phoenix, we're watching Mikal Bridges. And that is about it in terms of what's going on this one. Again, tomorrow, Micah Patria will join us on the podcast. We'll break down more of the DFS stuff and get you ready for the contest on Friday. And a live show with Aaron Bruski this Friday, the rest of the week on Fantasy NBA Today. Big thanks again to Vince Miracle. Have a wonderful Wednesday. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.